You ever wonder how the internet just knows what you want? Sometimes even before you do. Well, today we're going to break down a huge concept that explains our entire digital world. And, it all kicks off with this really weird story about a book that basically came back from the dead. So, think about this for a second. How can a book, one that did just okay when it came out, suddenly blow up and find a massive new audience, like a decade after it was published? It sounds impossible, right?
Okay, so here are the two books at the center of this mystery. On one side, you've got Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer, an instant monster bestseller about a Mount Everest disaster. It was everywhere. On the other side, Joe Simpson's Touching the Void, a similar story, but it had a quiet release years earlier and was pretty much forgotten. But then, get this, in 2004, something crazy happened. The forgotten book started outselling the blockbuster hit.
So what happened? It wasn't some huge marketing campaign. Nope. The answer was the internet. See, online stores like Amazon have basically infinite shelf space, and their algorithm started to notice a little pattern. People who bought Into Thin Air, well, they also love Touching the Void. So those recommendations started connecting the dots, and a forgotten niche book suddenly found its audience, a massive one. This was one of the first big signs of a totally new economic reality. Now, to really get why this was such a game changer, we have to rewind and look at how things used to be. For pretty much the entire 20th century, our culture and our economy were ruled by one simple, powerful force: scarcity. And that brings us to this idea called the tyranny of locality. Just picture a record store or a movie theater from back in the day. They've only got so much shelf space, right? A limited number of screens. They couldn't afford to take a risk. They could only stock the stuff they knew would sell to the people in their town. Everything else? Well, it just didn't make the cut.
So this old world was basically a giant filter. Because space was limited and costs were high, industries had no choice but to chase after a few guaranteed blockbusters. They had to create hits because there was just no money in anything that wasn't a hit. Culture was whatever the gatekeepers decided could fit on the shelf. That was it.
But the internet just smashed that model to pieces. Digital stores and infinite shelf space didn't just give us more stuff. They created a completely new shape for the market. And this is where we finally unleash the long tail. This image shows the whole idea perfectly. Think of a sales chart. The big hits, the blockbusters, they're the tall head on the left. But stretching out to the right is this nearly endless long tail of niche products. The books, songs, and movies, but only sell a few copies a month. Now here's the mind-blowing part. If you add up all those tiny sales in the tail, the total market can be just as big or even bigger than the hits. Chris Anderson, the guy who really developed this theory, said it perfectly. It's a totally backward idea compared to how we used to think. We spent 100 years chasing the big score, when a gigantic, untapped market was hiding in all the stuff that wasn't a blockbuster. Let's put them side by side. The short head, that's the old way, is about selling a lot of a few things. The long tail is about selling a few of a lot of things. The real magic happens when you realize just how massive that tail is. We're talking millions of niche products, and when you put them all together, their collective power is just immense.
Okay, so how on earth did this happen? It wasn't just one thing. It was really a perfect storm of three huge technological shifts that completely rewrote the rules for making and selling stuff.
First, the tools to make stuff got into everyone's hands. Suddenly, anyone with a laptop could record an album or write a book. Second, the way we distribute stuff changed. The internet became a global marketplace with almost zero shipping costs. And third, and this is the absolute key, we built new tools to connect supply and demand. Things like search engines and recommendation algorithms, they're the modern-day matchmakers that help us find the exact niche thing we're looking for.
So this economic shift had a huge cultural impact. I mean, it didn't just change what we buy, it changed who we are and how we connect with each other.
We went from a world of mass culture, where everyone gathered around the water cooler on Monday to talk about the same hit TV show, to something you could call massively parallel culture. Now we form thousands of little tribes around our super specific interests, whether that's 18th century poetry, acid jazz, or competitive bread baking. Our cultural lives are just way more individual and diverse than ever.
And the scale of this is, well, it's just staggering. Let's take YouTube. By the end of 2006, people were watching 100 million clips a day. Every single day. That's a viewership that could rival a TV network, and it was built almost entirely on niche, user-generated content that no traditional gatekeeper would have ever greenlit.
And this phrase just nails the new reality. Power shifted. It went from a few big broadcasters in New York or LA to the audience itself. We are the curators now. We're the distributors. And a lot of the time, we're the creators. The network isn't a TV station anymore. It's us.
So, what does this all mean for us? The people actually living in this world of infinite options. I mean, is it really a paradise of choice?
This really is the biggest takeaway. The thing that defined the 20th century was scarcity. Not enough shelf space, not enough channels, not enough access. The thing that defines the 21st century is abundance. For pretty much the first time in human history, we have access to nearly everything.
But here's the big criticism you always hear. The paradox of choice. You've probably heard about that famous study with the jam, right? A store offered 24 different kinds of jam, and customers got so overwhelmed they actually bought less than when they were only offered 6 choices. So does infinite choice just break our brains?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. The long tail theory argues that the problem isn't the choice itself. We love having options. The real problem is a lack of good filters to help us choose. That jam study, it wasn't a failure of variety, it was a failure of helping people decide. Good recommendations, reviews, search tools, that's the solution. They help us find ourselves inside all that abundance.
And that's really the final thought I want to leave you with. As you go about your day, scrolling through Netflix or Spotify or whatever, think about this. In a world where you can have literally anything, the most valuable thing isn't the stuff itself. It's the tools, the algorithms, and the people that help you find what you're truly going to love. So, in a world of infinite choice, what helps you decide?